Monster Hunter Wilds is a really deep game, and with so many systems, sometimes it struggles to properly relay all that information to you. Even after more than 100 hours with the game, I'm still learning new things every day, and there are many mistakes I kinda wish I knew about sooner. And chances are you also struggled with some of these, so without further ado, let's dive right in. At number 1, you should probably not skip out on bounties. These are basically daily missions and semi-daily missions that you can easily complete by just accessing the help desk right here. And you can already start doing a bunch of them from low rank, basically giving you some very useful items, especially as you progress in the game. Early on, it can be stuff like armor spheres, low-grade crafting mats, but as you progress further into high rank, you're going to unlock additional 2 more entries which will give access to even higher grade items. Yes, this includes even rarity 8. So this is something that you're going to do naturally anyway, usually involving hunts, expeditions, doing any of the activities over here. You have about like 2 to 3 days to complete them, but once you're done with that, pay attention to the pop-ups, go back to the help desk and just report back in. Plus, you're also going to be getting a few hundred extra guild points, which are going to come in handy as you will spend a few of those, especially once you reach high rank. At number 2, here's a few extra tips that will definitely help you out in combat, and one that is quite overlooked is the fact that you can easily do sneak attacks against targets, which is going to give you a nice boost of damage over there and get you closer a little bit to stunning that boss as well. So all you have to do is just approach them without being noticed, and once you're close enough, you can just press the sneak attack button prompt, which is going to appear on the screen once you get close enough. In this case, you're going to do a lot of damage, much more even compared to a jaw attack, for example. So it can definitely be quite helpful over there to take the enemy by surprise, maybe even inflict a wound quicker and get them on their backs much sooner. You don't even need a ghillie suit, by the way. As long as you approach them from the back while crouched or without being noticed, you will have plenty of time to get close and just bring them down really quickly. And here's one big mistake that I've been guilty of for the past 100 hours up until recently, when I started using some of these other different pods like the Sparkle Flint, the Bright Moss, the Water Moss. Especially Bright Moss is very useful. You can find a whole bunch of this starting in map 2, and it's not just nice at illuminating caves, it's amazing at knocking flying enemies out of the sky. And guess what? Yes, this absolutely stacks with any of the flash pods that you might have used in the same fight. Because the thing is, eventually the enemy will become resistant at it, and this is something that you can then use after using the flash pods, which is going to still have the same effect. The only caveat is that you have to aim it directly and hit them in the head so that they fall out of the sky. But if you pull it off successfully, this is going to give you a major advantage, as now you can unleash a whole bunch of damage. And you can even do it back to back again, so if you hit them again right after, they will still fall again. There may be a small internal cooldown, but it's still very useful to have. All of these tools will help a ton with some of the more pesky enemies. Now, if you progress enough into the main story, eventually you would have unlocked the fishing minigame from Kanya here back at the main camp in the Scarlet Forest. And I suggest completing these as they pop up, as this is going to reward you with better and better baits that are useful to capture some of the higher grade and more rare fish later down the line. And some of them, like the spear tuna one, are useful for crafting some high-end great swords, for example, so totally needed for that or for some other achievements. But how do you actually capture fish? Because I know some of you have struggled with it, especially the more rare ones like the whooper. Well, in this case, here's a few things. First of all, you're going to need the proper bait for them, so this is what you unlock from the main quest, but also pay attention to your monster manual, as this is going to give you all the information for which bait works for which fish. However, this is not going to guarantee you're going to capture it, so here's the next thing you have to do, and that is to slowly reel in that line towards you after you throw it in. It's just that the game relays that information to you wrong, or there's a mistranslation. The top banner here mentions that you have to flick the left analog stick up or down to lure the target. However, that is wrong. You have to flick it up and down, which is going to have to be done repeatedly but slow enough so that your character enters this animation in which they reel in that line back towards you. Doing it this way, in my experience, gave me the highest chance for that fish to immediately grab onto the line. Even for the super rare ones, they would immediately pay attention to it, even if there were other options in the water. But once you do catch a super massive one like a whooper, what do you do with it? Chances are that maybe your line broke, and that is because you fought against it, which snapped that line. In this case, what you have to do is to direct your left analog stick to whichever direction that fish is going towards. Chances are that it's going to switch that a lot during the fishing minigame, so just point it towards whichever place it's heading towards, as that's going to eventually exhaust it. And once it's getting exhausted, your character will enter this different animation, and in this you're going to have to do the same flicking minigame up and down, but this time around way quicker, as fast as you can, so that your character pulls in the target quickly. And once it does that enough times, eventually you should capture that fish relatively easily. And since we're on the subject of food, let me show you how you can constantly cook perfect well-done steaks, which are not just useful for an achievement, but also in combat, as they both replenish and extend the max gauges of both of your HP and stamina bars. So very useful, and you should always have them. In this case, you're going to need raw meat and your grill, so go to your tent and grab as much raw meat as you can. Chances are you have quite a ton of this, as you hunt a ton of monsters by this point anyway. From this point on, head over to the grill and choose the second option over here to grill your own meat. In this case, what you have to do and what worked best for me is to pay attention up until the moment your character flips the meat over and then places it again onto the grill. And here, after like a second or so, there's going to be a split second in which you're going to notice a new set of crispy textures popping off on the meat. And this is precisely the moment you want to lift it off the grill, point at which your character will enter the next animation to cut it into 5 different pieces. And in this case, if it's perfect, you should also see those shiny particle effects, as well as the achievement popping off if this is the first time you do it. But if you follow it like how I just showed you, you should always get it perfectly done no matter what. But since we were on the subject of camps, you can actually advance time or change the time of day as well as the season in case you're farming for something specific. You can easily do this from any camps, including the pop-up ones, by going into the barbecue menu right here, and then beneath the grill and meal, you're going to have the rest option. And this, yes, is going to cost like 300 of those guild points, but is very much going to be useful, as now you can change both the environment as well as the time. So in this case, it's going to be very useful as you're going to farm things later down into the game. So let's say you're looking for specific bosses that spawn at different times of the day, or maybe you're looking for the inclemency so that you have higher chances for more tougher challenges. You can definitely do that. Equally, if you're going fishing and need a specific spawn, some of them actually only spawn or have higher chances to spawn during the plentiful season and during daytime. So this is going to give you that advantage. Also, keep in mind that resources immediately regenerate upon resting. So if you're close to a resource node, such as ores, for example, make sure you pick them off, because once you're done resting, you can pick them off again, as they replenish pretty much instantaneously. Not that that is a good farming method, mind you, as it costs 300 points every time you do it, but you should still take advantage of it and not let it go to waste when you do need it for something else. Anyway, let's also talk about some settings you should immediately go ahead and change, and I can't believe it took me this long for the next one, but this will make combat 100 times easier. Basically, head over to the camera control settings, go to the second page, and look here at the middle section to the camera distance zoom. By default, this is set to 4, but go ahead and change it to 10 if you want to. This is going to pan back out the camera a little bit more, which is going to give you a much bigger field of vision to your surroundings. And especially against fights such as Rathalos, for example, this is a godsend, as this is now going to give you the possibility to see them much better, especially for the aerial dive bomb. I can't believe I have wasted so many hours not knowing this. Besides that, another thing I recommended in the previous videos, but I'm gonna say it again, is just turning that aim focus mode for the melee weapon from active to press to toggle. This is going to make things a lot easier, as now you just have to press L2, which is going to toggle the focus mode control, so that you don't have to constantly hold it down. Especially for some of the weapons, it can be very problematic because you have a lot of button combinations, especially on the controller, and you really don't want to have that in combat. This is going to just make things a lot easier and more convenient. Another thing you can go ahead and change is the minimap rotation in the game settings first page, from, in this case, rotating to fixed. So this is going to change it from this, basically the whole minimap rotates as you rotate, to this, only your character rotates and that map is stationary. I still prefer the first variant just because old habits die hard, and that's how it's always been for me in video games, but you're free to change it. Another one is the weapon attack power display, which only recently did I find out that you should probably go ahead and disable. It's right here by the third page, also in the game settings. So this is going to help a ton with some of the weapons apparently, so that it shows the real attack values that you have without taking into account any of the coefficients. So for example, you're going to see the true damage that you're going to deal with it, which is going to make for a much easier comparison between what's a next upgrade for you. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a night and day change for me. It's much easier to notice which ones are better to choose. And finally, in the settings menu, maybe it's not a bad idea to change item use control from type 1 to type 2, so that instead of just flicking the right analog stick, you now have to also press it to select items, shoutouts, and other stuff from the custom radial menu. This way, you're not activating stuff you're not supposed to, especially in the middle of combat when you're not paying attention to the finest details. And speaking of the radial menu, you can further customize it with other items, emoticons, and even full-on loadouts by heading over to the customize radial menu option right here at the item menu. And one of the things I immediately done is basically change all of the animations and like pretty much all of the communication options I could, especially in terms of the poses and whatnot. You can change them with whichever ones you want from the same photo mode too. You can even set up whole loadouts. Let's say, for example, you want a loadout that is purely focused on capturing creatures, as we talked about previously. This is going to help a ton with that. You just switch to it, grab the items you want, and then bam, you can just go into that expedition and have all of those items at the ready. Speaking of creatures, capturing them is still going to be very relevant even in Monster Hunter Wilds, and I tested it even more since the previous video, and I can say that for especially the super rare parts that are not guaranteed or a result out of carving or destroying parts, specifically stuff like gems, certificates, or even creature essences, the best way to grab them is to capture that creature. Sometimes you will even get up to 3 of them per one single capture. And these essences, certificates, or even the gems are very useful to craft some of the weapons. A lot of the rare ones especially will need at least one of these items, and this is going to ensure that you get at least one per capture. At least that's been my experience. But for that, you will need to craft at least the shock trap as well as the sleeping bombs, unless you're going with the ammo route instead. But this is the easiest if you don't use a bowgun, for example. So this is something that in the early stages will have to be done a bit more manually, but it's also easy to gather. So parashrooms you can find in the first map, and you can also get the sleeping herbs from the forest area. But in this case, what I recommend doing is filtering through the map for all of these resources. You can just press left on the D-pad or right on the D-pad, which is going to bring you to this small mini menu here that lets you filter for everything. In this case, for the resources, all of them will be present in this menu, so you can go ahead, highlight them, and immediately set a waypoint towards them. So if you're struggling to find something because there are many icons on the map at any given time, this is going to be your best bet to manually search for the specific thing you want to. And this will also give you a good general idea if you will find a particular resource on the current map or not. Later on into the game though, like I said before, you will unlock various NPCs that will retrieve these items for you, and if you complete their side missions, they can give you a ton of these resources. Like I'm talking hundreds of each of them, so you can easily craft both of these items. If you want some of those trap tools, you can just buy them at any of your camp. This guy right here will always have at least a couple that he can sell towards you, so buy them, craft them, but they also drop from all the missions that you're going to be doing, so you can craft a lot of them. And once you have them, all you have to do is to deal damage to the enemy up until it starts limping, or your palico or anybody in your party mentions that the boss is looking weak. And from this point, it's exactly how it's been in World. You just follow it, place down the shock trap, throw down those 2 sleep bombs. You will need 2, by the way, back to back, so you can cause most of the monsters to go to sleep and end that right away. Do keep in mind, however, that just like before, not all of the monsters can be captured at all and put to sleep. Some of them are completely immune to it, even to the shock trap. And while we're on the subject, let's say maybe you don't want to use that shock trap but place it accidentally, or the boss just didn't walk through it and ran away. You can retrieve it by getting close to it and interacting with the button prompt to lift it off. This way you don't have to waste it, since technically you can only have one crafted trap at a time with you of the same type. Moving on next, let's also talk about the special items, aka former account items that you will see on the map with the question mark, typically gemstones, crystals, also different types of coins or treasures. These will appear with the question marks on the map, but are still worth getting because you're going to use these in trading. Like I said in the previous video, there are many traders you will unlock by helping out villagers with their side quests. But once you unlock them, you're going to notice that they require some of these special items, and in exchange they may give you some stuff that may be very important. So this includes high tier crafting mats, but also other useful stuff that you can use in cooking or other forms of crafting, or maybe just straight out stuff you can consume. That's why always get these, pay attention to what they need, and typically you're going to find them within the same map. But also pay attention to all the maps as they have different sources like these you can find around. I also want to talk about the photo mode, and I am quite impressed and shocked by some of the small attention to detail over here. Specifically, there are some nice, cool animations you can have. Now, photo mode is quite extensive. You can obviously take a first-person shot, but you can also then just press, in this case, X on the Xbox controller, and you're going to take a picture of your own character. And it's in real time, so you can perform animations, you can do moves, you can do whatever you want to have the perfect shot. But here's the thing, when your character does a hello, your other companions will do the same. The Palico and also Alma included, which is a nice touch, I'm not gonna lie. In fact, in one of the shots, if one of the characters is outside of the view, but you pan that camera towards them, like to Alma, she reacted and also waved towards the camera, which is such a nice attention to detail. That is just one of the things I wanted to say about the photo mode. I am quite blown away by how much you can do with it and how extensive the settings are. Definitely give it a try. It's going to be awesome. A few other tips that I have along the way that didn't make it into their own category. Try to pay attention to the ingredient center often as you visit any of the major camps, as you can just get rations for free from this cat right here, and you can use those rations to also cook meals or consume them in battle right away to extend your stamina bar, which can be helpful if you forgot to grab a meal before that fight. And of course, don't forget that you do have a training area right from the almost beginning of low rank. It's going to be pretty much on the map, staying there. You likely already saw it, but it gives you such a good way to actually learn the basics and the timings of attacks and how your weapons actually behave against them. Like for example, if there's a small delay in your animation, you will have to know to preemptively use that when a boss is about to land an attack on you. Like for the great sword, for the switch axe, but there's plenty others in there like the bow gun, all have different animations that will connect if you do it at the right moment. And you can of course talk to this cat next to the battlefield to change the settings on the main card and make it, for example, hit or throw things at you, also change its strength settings and so on and so forth, which is going to better prepare you if you want to try out a new weapon loadout, which I heavily encourage you to do. I'm currently trying to learn as much as I can the charge blade. I think it's such an amazing option, but I'm still trying to learn like properly how to control it in combat. I'm getting there, but I think it could be way better. So yeah, that's pretty much it with the video. Thanks so much for watching. If there's anything else you may know that hasn't been covered, let me know down below in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.